Hello, this is Mike in Cincinnati. For those of you that seen my Hornady 366 demo, I appreciate you looking. In this particular demo, I am going to be showing you the differences between the PW or Ponsonus Warren series. This particular one here is the 800B, made over 50 years ago, but it's built like a tank. And there's very few differences between this particular model and some of the newer models that are out there. I'll show you the differences. This particular model here is a Size-O-Matic 1084. It's a serial number. There's not a whole lot of like I said, there's not a lot of differences between this series and prior series, and I'll quickly go through the differences. This particular model here is got shot and powder already loaded into it. This arm right here controls the powder on-off, if you can see it. That's in the off position, that's in the on position, and if you push it all the way to the back, it'll drain from right here. Make sure you don't do that unless you got something underneath it. Likewise on the back, this is the shot. It's in the off position. If you move it that way, it's in the on position. And if you move it to the left, it's in the drain position. It comes out there. That's pretty consistent among all of the PW series. The difference, let's see, now going down to the other moving parts. Very similar, the wad kickout seats the wad, and this ramrod actually seats the wad, so you place the wad in there. Similar. They all have the tried true primer tray, primer rail, and they also have the primer feed system, which when you lift it up, it automatically feed primers into the system. I kind of like it a little bit better than the 366s because you can actually see it going in versus it going down a tube, and I don't know, it's just a pretty simple system, and they've stuck with it because it's worked well. This is a 12 gauge, and it's got the fully encapsulated dies. The nice thing about that, as well as all PWs, is you don't need a resizer because each and every time you put a hole in there on your upward stroke, it resizes into this die, so each and every shell is resized. It's part of the function. It makes the upward stroke just a tad firm, but you know that when you do it, that every shell that you spit out is going to be resized. That's especially important if you shoot semi-automatics because they'll cycle properly. Because if they don't, if you don't resize certain semi-autos, like I said, they get hung up and they don't cycle. This is a 900 series. Once again, the die set or the powder, the shutoffs, the tube, the rail, the primer feed system are the same. This model I've set up for my 20 gauge shells. The only difference is it's basically a 20 gauge die versus a 12 gauge die. Same operation. This model right here I got a counter on it, a shell counter. Every time you pull out a shell, it'll tell you. I don't know if you can read that or not. It's a counter. Don't need to further explain it. Once again, it's got the same shut off, powder, shot, primer rail, primer feed. The only difference is the this die set. It still does the resizing, but to where you can get to the shell a little bit easier if for some reason that you need to. But the rule of thumb is if you put a piece of junk hull in there, you may have problems, but for the most part, as long as you're not slamming this thing around, you shouldn't have any problems. One other thing, that if you're setting up a system in your house, there's a tray that the finished shell comes down. What I've done is instead of the hull dropping right behind it, I actually have a system set up with some 3-inch PVC connected with a 2-inch reducer on it. It's got an elbow underneath and it goes into a basket. Likewise for my 20 gauge. And what that does is, if you can see this arm that goes up and down, okay, if you don't have something like this, what will happen is occasionally you'll get a loaded shell underneath there. And you're like, hey, why won't it index? Well, it won't index because there's a loaded shell underneath it, and you just squash the shell. So that in a nutshell is the different series. Once again, that's the 800B, the 900, and the 950. Let's go back to the 800B. Because, like I said, this thing's 40 plus years old, but it loads great shells. It's a tank. These things are truly presses. They're not reloading machines like some of the smaller. I don't want to say flimsier because they're everybody's got their favorite, but this thing is actually a press. Now, what I'm going to do in this particular demonstration is I'm going to take a shell that's a little bit harder to load. The reason I'm going to load this shell is twofold. And once again, the information I'm giving you, make sure you check with the powder manufacturer so you have the correct recipe. This particular shell here is a federal gold medal. The reason I'm loading it is because I'm loading something that I want out there at 1,300 feet per second. But when you use the correct powder and you use all the federal components like the federal primers, federal hulls, this is a straight hull versus the double A's that are tapered, likewise with the Remington that are tapered. And the powder I'm going to use is IMR 7625, which it's a little more expensive, but it's going to be able to throw my 1 ounce load out there at 1,300 feet per second, and the chamber pressure in the shell is only going to be about 7,600 pounds of chamber pressure. You double A guys, I understand, I shoot double A's as well, but typically a double A component setup is going to run you somewhere around 10,000 plus pounds of pressure in your chamber. It's a very recoil friendly. You're probably asking, why do you need something that hot? Well, I'm actually loading some of these up because I'm shooting in a Calcutta, in this particular place I'm shooting at. When everybody ties, they go back basically 40 yards behind the trap machine instead of 27. And you need something with a little giddy up because by the time you hit that bird, it's going to be out there 60, 65 yards. So these are going to be a little bit hotter shells. Once again, follow the instructions. That being said, the second reason I'm going to load this particular shell, and the reason why it's a little bit more difficult, is the size of the brass. Now, this is a high brass hull, okay? Meaning that when it does resize into the die, you're going to have to give it a little bit more oomph because it's resizing that entire base, which most bases aren't like that. So the cheaper shells, that's why you don't have recipes for 1,300 plus, is because these are made for hunting shells and higher load, hunting shells meaning game loads, as well as higher velocity shot shell recipes. So anyway, here you go. I'm gonna load a couple shells, a couple of the plastic federal gold medals, and this is a throwback. I'm also going to load a paper one to show you how functional that this machine is. So the first stroke, we're going to push it down, as you can see. Okay, you got to go all the way with it because that way it resizes that large brass, and when you pull down, it's gonna the tray's going to come up. Okay. Now, one of the things about the tray coming up that I wanted to show you, since we don't have any powder or anything of that nature on, you want to make sure you move this little thing right here so it allows your primers to feed. So we're going to move it up. It's going to drop a primer. I'm going to load another hull in here. Okay. Up. What did I do that for? You only need one primer at a time. Go figure. I always brag about the 800B being the machine that a one-handed guy can use. Well, not when he's talking and trying to do this. So anyway, we got the hull in there. Now the downward stroke is going to set the primer, and it's going to resize that hull. Okay, now when I pull the handle back down, it's going to rotate, or should I say index to the right, and I'm going to want to drop shot in here, or powder in here. So I'm going to reach up here, turn it on, and just FYI, I've gotten some complaints about PWs and or progressive machines in general dropping powder and shot. Well, if you pay attention to what you're doing, it reduces the chance of you doing that. Operator error. But another cool little thing is to put a plastic tray underneath it as a means to catching it so you don't get yelled at by your significant other. Okay, so I'm going to pull the handle down. Okay. powder just dropped. This shell just got deprimed, and another one was seated. Now I'm going to put another hull in there. I'm going to push it all the way up, all the way, so it resizes the new hull that you put in there. And when the handle's all the way up, it'll make a clicking sound, which is a nice feature about the 800B that the other ones don't. The wad bearing, or the wad kickout, will pop out. Now on the downward stroke, it'll swing back in. Okay. Once again, the powder dropped, as well as this was just deprimed. Now that's our paper shell. Now since we're not going to load another shell after that, and there's already one seated in there, I'm going to turn off the primer feed, because what will happen occasionally is the machine, because there's a lot of primers in this rail, it'll want to feed 2 primers at the same time. So I'm going to turn that off because I'm not going to load any more shells. Okay, so it's set the shell. It's asking for another wad. That was the upstroke, so I'm going to put another wad in there. Now when it cycles, it's going to come over to this position. Okay, it's going to rotate one position. That's the position that the shot's going to drop from. Okay, so it's important that we turn the shot on. So I'm going to come up here, and if you can see where the shot on-off is, I'm going to turn that in the on position. Okay, the next one, it'll cycle over. Not sure if you heard it or not, but it did. Okay, so we're going to push the handle up, the wad throw-out bearing comes out. I'm going to put another one in here. Now here's where you make the rookie mistakes if you're not paying attention. If you're not going to put a wad in there, this is going to cycle over to here. Well, right here is where the powder drops. So don't make the rookie mistake, and if you do, I've done it before and I'll do it again. I'm going to turn the powder off, because once again, when I pull the handle down, every time you pull the handle down, powder drops, shot drops. So we turned that off. No powder all over the place. That's a lovely thing. Okay, as you can see from that's our first shell. That's a nice pre-crimp. Okay, the wad kick out throughout, but you know what? We already have a wad in there, so it's going to index over. Okay, so where we're at in the process is our last shell. That paper shell just got shot dropped into it. Okay, I am going to turn the powder off, or shot off now, because it's going to rotate, and if you don't turn it off, you're going to drop shot all over the place. Okay, click it. That's one finished shell, 2 finished shells, 3 finished shells. Now, as you can tell from the shells, okay, and I'll try to quit moving my hands. I'll just put them on the flat surface here. That's about as good a shell as that you can load right there. And like I said, that puppy will hum at about 1,300 feet per second. And as far as the paper ones, pretty nice. Nice radius. I have it set up with an 8 crimp in it, an 8-star crimp in it, whereas the paper one's actually like 6. But you know, it's nice and tight. There's a little bit of hole, but like I said, it likes the 6 point. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whereas that's 8. Like I said, it'll load pretty much anything. So that's my demonstration of the 800B. And hope you enjoyed it, and have yourself a great day. And one other thing, real quick, is for me to test my powder drops, I'll take a 20 gauge hull, because check this out. A 20 gauge hull drops right down there, so I can take it in and out, run it around, pull it out, put it on my scale, and check it. So just another tip from your Uncle Larry, or in this particular case, Mike in Cincinnati. So hope you enjoyed the demo, and hope you enjoy your PW. Have a great day. Thanks for looking.